This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
In collaboration with Australian Jewish News, check them out at ajn.timesofisrael.com. Also in collaboration with Arutz Sheva, israelnationalnews.com. When you think about the history of the land of Israel, you probably think about King David, the Romans, Kochva, or the Ottoman Empire. But the fact of the matter is that all of those powerful rulers and leaders roamed this land pretty recently. After all, what is 1,000, 2,000, or even 3,000 years in the history of mankind? In recent centuries, archaeologists have been working hard to reveal the many secrets buried in layers upon layers of earth here in Israel. All of us have heard about the various findings regarding Jewish ancient history, but long before any records of monotheism, ancient men and women lived here. Israel's strategic location, right on the border between Asia and Africa, made it an important crossroads for humanity for tens of thousands of years. Nowadays, it is the Israel Antiquities Authority, IAA, who's responsible for digging up and revealing the secrets of ancient times. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by archaeologist Emily Bischoff Bruintjes.
Bruintjes.
What?
Bruintjes.
Bruintjes. Okay, that was totally off. That I love how you made a face like it was kind of close. It was just it was like the opposite of what.
But you got Bischoff right. Most people don't even get that either.
Bischoff.
Yeah.
Emily Bischoff Bruintjes.
Yes.
Who works for and digs for the IAA. Emily is a prehistoric archaeologist who currently digs in southern Israel. She holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Minnesota and a master's from Tel Aviv University. She is originally from Minnesota, but now she lives in Israel. And we're super excited to talk to Emily today about her work and Israel's prehistoric history.
Yeah.
Before we get to the episode, we want you, dear listener, to ask yourself a question. What have you done these past 2 years? You know, the pandemic hit us all really hard. What have you really done other than perfect that matzo ball soup recipe of yours? Nothing. Now, we all want to add purpose and meaning to our life, and we have the way to really, really make your dreams come true. If you're listening, you're likely interested in Israel with hopes of traveling here soon. Well, lucky for you, we've got the scoop on Masa Israel Journey. With an amazing range of life-changing opportunities in Israel, Masa has many, many programs. They've got gap year programs, academics, internships, volunteering, and careers. The pandemic didn't stop them either, promoting options to study remotely while living in Israel. You don't have to be fluent in Hebrew or break your bank account. They even supply partial funding so you can make a positive impact on the world. You can fuel your passion and you can make your travel dreams a reality. Go to masaisrael.org and find out more. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
Okay, who lived here 10,000 years ago?
Oh, good gosh. There's, well, there were people here.
Not just men.
Not just men. There were men and women. There were people of all kinds.
I gotta call out. No, he wrote men here. You almost slipped me up, man. I was gonna get canceled
for not mentioning women.
Yeah.
No, there's all kinds of people. There were several different. One of the debates in prehistoric archaeology is the different types of cultures that we would call them. So there's Ashulian, there's Natufian, there's all different kinds of cultures, and we tried to differentiate between them based on the style of pottery that they made. I'm not one who really subscribes to the idea that there's very distinct cultures. I think there's different groups of people who use slightly different styles, but they were all...
That is the main indicator, the main signifier is the pottery?
Yes, because in prehistory you have, depending upon 10,000 years ago is actually pre-pottery. So it's very difficult to tell the different groups of people because all you have is flint tools. And those are...
And teeth.
Yes, and teeth, but like human teeth don't really tell you too much.
Yeah. They were all bad.
They were, yeah, no kidding, all bad. Oh, and they were also malnourished. We often find they didn't eat a whole lot of vegetables because you only picked what you could find because you didn't. Agriculture wasn't as widespread or as diverse as it is today. Oftentimes, what you have at the beginning of agriculture is that they stuck to one crop and
I see.
only ate that, and so it's not exactly healthy.
So only potatoes or only wheat or
exactly. And so it's later that they start to diversify and their diet gets better. But
I see.
when you start doing agriculture, you see a lot of
so no obesity problems or
no,
anything like that.
No. You often see the difference, and in fact, you see when we study the bones of people before agriculture, they're actually a little bit healthier, and then when agriculture hits, their diet and health actually go down before they go back up again because they are readjusting to the style of life and adjusting their diet.
It's amazing. Because I was thinking about that this week. I started a diet. Yeah, I know it's embarrassing, but I started a diet, and I was thinking, I was thinking how ridiculous it is that we've gotten to a place where like we have to hold ourselves back. Where there's such abundance, we have to hold back from. Like if a prehistoric human was watching, he'd be like, "What?"
Yeah. It wouldn't.
What? You're not going to eat the waffle crisps?
Oh yeah, they wouldn't. It is very interesting, and actually, that's I had a thought, and now it's gone.
There's just like you ate what you had.
Yep.
You never knew. I mean, do we know what the life expectancy was back then?
If you got, and this is actually an interesting topic because a lot of people believe that the life expectancy, everyone died at age 30, and it's not actually true. It's that we average life expectancy based on how many people died and how many people lived, which meant that you've got a lot of dead children that
you can
kind
say
of
dead
weight,
babies.
yes, that kind of weight the scale towards life expectancy being shorter. But in fact, if you make it to your 20s, you lived for decently life.
Yeah.
Prehistory, it's kind of hard to say because it's also you have to actually find the bones to know.
So it's not like humans evolved to live longer in the last 10,000 years because 10,000 years is like a blip in evolution, right? We always were built to live like
had the potential.
70,
Had the
80
potential.
years. Yeah.
Because it's also, again, you're a prehistorian, you're a prehistoric human. Yeah, you could live, if you get to your 30s, you could live longer, but you got to watch out for being stampeded by mammoths because you're hunting mammoths. You got to watch out for other stuff. You got to, depending upon your style of hunting, because some groups of people throughout what they
might
would do.
get eaten by a velociraptor.
Oh, well, yeah, sure.
Or am I?
A little, not quite what happened.
Anachronistic. Just a bit of a...
Just a bit. But I mean, other groups of people that we have seen that they would chase like the mammoths of people over cliffs, and so if you weren't careful, you would go over the cliff with the mammoths, and so you might die because that's the way they killed them. Because if you didn't have spears or bows and arrows before that, that's what they did.
They would chase the mammoths over the cliff.
They would herd mammoths and
over a cliff.
Over cliffs, not necessarily mammoths, but other
large
mammals. But yeah,
and
that was
then they
another
would
way.
go and collect them at the bottom of the cliff.
Yep.
That's ingenious.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's what you had to do before,
right?
And that's even before stone tools and stuff. And
wow.
Because you also, bow and arrow was a later invention. At first, you only had spears, and so if you didn't want to have to run alongside and stab.
Yeah.
So can you give us a little rundown of the periods?
Oh gosh, so
what is prehistoric and
so like as in time, as in actual like years? So
more or less, yeah.
So prehistory.
We understand.
Okay, so you have the very arbitrary year 0, which is very much based on Christian belief. That's the year that Jesus died and whatever else. So about...
Born.
No, he died.
Died.
Because if you remember, it's AD, it's after death.
Okay, yeah.
Gotta love that Christian-centric thinking. But so about 5,000 years is when, before that, is the advent of pottery and agriculture about. So another 5,000 years before that is even further back into prehistory. And that's much closer. So 10,000 years is going to be, you're starting to have the development of agriculture and moving forward. Even beyond that is prehistory. That's upper Paleolithic and lower Paleolithic and millions of years. That's also when your stone tools are going to be much bigger. Your flint tools. I keep saying stone tools. there's difference. There's flint tools and there's
I was
stone
going to
tools.
say, we have no idea what the difference
So,
is.
Flint tools are tools that are made out of flint, and flint is a very easy rock to. The term in archaeology is napping, to nap, which basically means you take a rock or another tool and you knock it against the flint to create an object or a sharp edge on your flint. And flint is very good at.
It breaks kind of with sharp edges.
Yes, it breaks very well.
Kind of like glass,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
So flint flakes, it flakes, so it does this very well, so you get this sharp edge. And so earlier time periods, you're going to have, for like example, I can't remember the time period for it, but my favorite flint tool, it's called the Acheulean hand axe, because there's also, before 10,000 years, we label the different time periods of human evolution and human existence based on the type of stone tool. So, or the type of napping. So you have Acheulean, you have Le Valois, you have Mousterian. These are French, because the French were the ones who found them. But my favorite flint tool is an Acheulean hand axe, but it's often, it's about this big, and it's in the shape of a giant leaf. And it's just, we don't know if it's ceremonial or not, because it is so big that you don't quite know how they would have even used it. But they're definitely, it's a specific style, a specific type, and it's just, they're beautiful, and they're just a feat of engineering.
So is there something unique to our area, like to Israel, that makes it different in any way than...
Not that I know of.
I see. So these periods in history are very similar across the entire globe?
Yeah, because also what we think is that, because we all came out of Africa, is that as we branched along Africa, along those routes of travel, that's also where the technology moved. That's also why in Europe, their Bronze Age is much later than the Bronze Age here. Because as the information traveled, and as
Is
people
there
got
any
there,
dispute about the Africa
Origin?
within archaeology, no. Not
So how is that so clear? What are the kind of findings?
like the traveling out of Africa.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, we find just recently, I don't know if I can say that. I don't know if it's been published, but we have found similar prehistoric hominids that we found in Africa. We've actually found them here in Israel as well. So we know that they moved and came here. So we have, I don't know which hominid, but
I see.
the same type. So like the only one, like for example, Homo erectus, it's the direct ancestor before us because we're Homo sapiens. So Homo erectus. Some of us, yes. But Homo erectus was the hominid that came before us, and we have found them throughout the world. And so, but we've also found them starting in Africa as well. So they must have traveled and moved.
Yeah.
And we can also date the bones and all that
So
jazz.
all the dating is carbon dating, even of the pottery. You have to have organic material. on
So
it? Like, how
not
does that
everything is carbon dating. There's a lot of other types of dating, and it's been a while since I've read that, so I don't really know if I should describe it because it will be very inaccurate. But there's other types of dating other than carbon dating that are actually more accurate than carbon dating.
Oh, really?
Yes, because carbon dating, you could have... carbon dating is very helpful, but every time that you date carbon dating, you have a plus of minus of years around the date that they give you when you get a carbon date.
Depending probably how far back you go.
Yes,
Also, it gets
exactly.
bigger the farther back.
Actually, the further back, because you get the carbon half-life, and so...
It's actually more accurate.
I don't...
Okay.
Again, this is something I haven't done in a while, so I
Google
don't
it,
know.
guys.
Yes, Google it, because I don't remember. But it's that's where carbon dating can be. Carbon dating is very, very helpful, but you oftentimes want another additional things. You don't just... let's put it this way. If you hang your entire archaeological research on a carbon dating, you'll get torn to shreds by your peers.
So how what other kind of dating is there?
I can't remember the exact name of it, but there's one about, I think it's called like spinning electron. It's where when you pull something, it's an organic material. I'm pretty sure it's either pottery or something else. I feel so bad I don't remember. But you put it in a special machine, and what that does is it makes the electrons release or flash, and based on how many flash at what frequency or whatever, that tells you dating, and it's actually far more accurate because the electrons
It's some sci-fi.
Yeah, and that's from like my first degree because we didn't talk about that in my second degree, so now it's been like 10 years. I don't remember.
So
but-
remember a little bit from history lessons that some of the dating is done actually by pottery styles
Yes.
and by the types of pottery. And
That's actually-
that's probably far less accurate.
It's far less accurate, but it's also that's what we use mostly in the field.
I see.
And it depends also on like it's very accurate in the Roman time periods. Like there are Roman archaeologists that you can hand them 3 different pieces of pottery and they can tell you that if the angle of the rim, the top edge of the pot, if it's here, it's this year, if it's here, it's this year, and if it's like here, it's this year.
Oh, wow.
And the rest of the pot can look the exact same, but the rim will be different, and they can tell you precisely what day it is because
Yeah.
that's how.
It's kind of like, you know, if you found like slim jeans or skinny jeans
Yes,
or whatever.
exactly.
From our time, you'd
Yep.
be like,
Yeah.
okay, this is 2012.
Yeah, exactly. Low rise,
Summer
2002.
collection.
Yeah,
Bell bottoms.
exactly.
Like, we're not sure if this is the 90s or the early 2000s,
Exactly.
but
Exactly. Or are these the 70s? Well, there's not enough lycra, so it must be the 70s. So but that's
pretty
more
crazy.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's also that speaks to the prolificness of the Roman pottery, and
Yeah.
that's that. It's as you go later back in time, we have less pottery examples because the pottery is also not nearly as strong. It's not fired as at precise temperatures or as hot at temperatures as the Romans, because by the time Romans, the pottery technology has developed to the point where they can control the heat of the flames, so they can get it to pretty decent high temperatures as well, so they can really bake that pottery, so the pottery really does last forever. But you have pottery from, say, the Chalcolithic, it will exist, but you have to be very careful with it because it's not fired very well, so it kind of can fall apart in your hands. And that's also very difficult because we don't have as many examples from Chalcolithic pottery. On top of that, it's also, you could say it's this really wide 200 years or 500 years within the Chalcolithic period, or it's this 500 years.
I see.
Because there's not as much of a style change within pottery as well.
So tell us about your diggings. What are some cool things that you found?
Oh, goodness.
In Israel.
In Israel. Oy. Goodness. That's also kind of complicated because I don't know what else, what has been published and what so I'm allowed to talk about. Well, I did dig at my university digs. I dug at Tel Aviv, and that was 6 years ago, and I hope it's published. But I was digging in a Persian iron smelting workshop, and so that was very interesting to find leftover pieces of iron from the smelting, and just to see that, and also because it was Persian period. Well, not just because it's Persian, but it was one of those moments where you had to step back and think about what did the landscape look like before, when they were doing this, because iron smelting at that time used a lot of wind to help power the flames, to help keep the flames going. And so we then realized that we loved, and it was on one side of the Tel where there was a lot of wind, and we realized that, oh, of course they would have it here because there's this beautiful breeze coming off here all the time. And it must have been even more without all these trees in our way. And so that was pretty cool. But there's
How
so
does
many-
it work? How does the IAA choose?
Well, this was with the university, Tel Aviv
Right.
University. The IAA doesn't necessarily. The IAA mostly does rescue and salvage excavations. We don't necessarily do research excavations. We can, but that's not necessarily the role.
So it's building sites.
So what's rescue and salvage?
Yeah.
So salvage is, wow, so sorry. It's been a long day, guys. So, as if I can remember correctly, one or the other. My brain is so fried. But one is where you come in and you gather as much information as you can in as quick amount of time as you can, and you get out. The other is you spend a little bit longer of a time to really dig and to really find everything that's there, and you take much longer to document it and to get or decide if you're going to preserve it.
And this is different than research in what sense?
Research, so both salvage and rescue, the point is to get as much information as you can and in as short amount of time as you can. Really, the only difference between the two is time length and the amount of money really given to it. A research excavation can go on for years. And also research excavations, you work at a far slower pace. and that you really do take your time to. So like Tel Azaka, Tel Megiddo, these are research excavations. Tel Megiddo has been going for years, and you don't dig as deep, or you dig far slowly. You every single item you document, you preserve, not necessarily preserve, but every single thing you find, you document, you research, you write, you send to the lab to study. There's usually a lot more money given to carbon dating. Rescue excavations and salvage excavations, there would be less money given to such things as carbon dating because it is expensive.
So does it have to do with the confidence level? Like you set up a research site when there's a high confidence of findings in that area?
Yes and no. Again, it's also depends upon, really in archaeology, it does come down to money and who has, the ability to keep that excavation going, or what it's going to be used for. So like Tel Megiddo, it's a park, it's a site that you can go to and constantly see. It also depends upon who's going to use it and when, or if it's going to be demolished. Rescue excavation and salvage excavations often happen when they are, especially with the IAA, because that is our purview, is that we come in to see what is there before they build a road or a building or parking lot.
Every single construction site in Israel is first surveyed by the IAA?
Yes, if it's within, throughout the country, we have sites that are declarations because this country has been surveyed ridiculously. So we know where there's archaeology throughout this country. And so then it will be it'll be a declared archaeological. It's not necessarily a site, but it's a declared archaeological region. And so if you're going to dig in that region, then yes, you must contact the Reshut, the IAA, and then my manager, I am not that high up yet. My manager then meets with the contractor, and they discuss the level of archaeology, what is there.
Even in Tel Aviv?
Oh, even in Tel Aviv. It's all over. It's the entire country.
So you can find in Tel Aviv, in a site, prehistoric.
Not necessarily prehistoric, but you could find Bronze Age, you can find Iron Age, more in North Tel Aviv and South Tel Aviv, because the majority of Tel Aviv, the majority of Tel Aviv is brand new, so you got to go down to Jaffa or go North Tel Aviv.
And how, like you were mentioning, you were aching.
Yes, today I had to.
So how does your day look like?
Well, my day is I get up around between 5 to 5:30.
What?
Depends upon how far.
What does that hour even look like?
It's very dark.
It's dark still?
So
You're obviously not in the 5 a.m. club, Eitan.
No. It's not so dark. The sun still comes up. It's better when there's daylight savings, because then it's light again. Because otherwise it's like, I am alone in the world. But so I get up around then. It takes me about a half an hour to get all my stuff together, to get dressed, and then I'm out the door. I usually work in the region of Ashdod, Ashkelon. And so each day I might be at a different site. Sometimes, very rarely, thankfully, I am sent to Beersheba. Nothing wrong with Beersheba. It's a lovely city. It's just a very far drive.
All our Beersheba listeners know.
Yeah, I'm like, nothing against Beersheba.
Yeah.
Nothing against Beersheba. It's just, if I have to be in Beersheba at 7:30, it's like I got to leave by 6.
It's the most hated destination by Israeli soldiers.
And archaeologists, apparently.
And archaeologists.
Well, there are archaeologists who live in Beersheba, who work in Beersheba. They love it. And it's a very nice city, and there's a lot of fun archaeology there.
They're like, just don't send me to Tel Aviv.
Yes, exactly. Because although Tel Aviv is an entirely different district, so I work in the southern district. There are 4 districts within the IAA. There's the northern district, there's the central district, there's the Jerusalem district, and then there's the southern district. And the southern district goes about Ashdod, south of Gan Yavne, all the way to Eilat.
So you show up in Ashkelon, Ashdod around what time?
7 o'clock, 7:30.
And you have a team?
No, depends on what I am doing. There are 4 different types of activities that I, as a supervisor, or a mefakachet in Hebrew, that I do. There is pikuach, or supervision, which is basically I walk around a site where where there's construction happening, and I just make sure that they don't find any
Skulls.
archaeology or if they find something to make sure.
Prehistoric skulls. If it's just a normal skull, they're like, okay, you can throw it away.
Well, I'm also just because I'm my focus is more in prehistory doesn't mean that I must ignore
Other
classic
skulls.
stuff. So any kind of archaeology I have to, if I find it, I have to go, okay, stop, we need a break, let me check this, let me get my manager, we got to decide what we're going to do. Because that's also the other discussions. If we find something, do we, depending upon what it is, do we section it off? Do we let them just fill it in and move on? Do we tell them to move?
It's probably their worst nightmare to find anything,
Yes, although it's even worse of a nightmare if we catch them and they haven't told us that they're digging.
Right.
That's a huge fine. It's actually a very big deal.
They haven't told you, but what if you catch them like trying to hide away a coin or something?
I call in the robbery unit because in the IAA we have a whole division it's shod robbery that you call, and they actually come in and arrest people.
With helicopters?
Not necessarily, but they do arrest people. They do. I think there was just something in Wynett that they caught people digging in a site and they arrested them or got the police to arrest them.
We got to go into this a little bit and then we'll get back to your day to day because I want to hear about it. But this is somewhat political, but isn't it basically you're not allowed to dig in Israel? Like
No.
if can I take a shovel out to the Negev and just start digging?
No.
Yes, Satan, you can.
Yeah. No.
Even if you could, you
No, I
wouldn't.
No. It's
I won't show up there at 7, that's for sure.
Well, I think also again, are you within an achaza, and also why? If it's in your garden and you're digging to plant like vegetables.
Yeah. But then if I find a coin and I keep
Or a
it, it's
fossil.
robbery.
Even a
Yes.
fossil.
Well, a fossil, I don't know. That's not. I actually don't know what happens with fossils in Israel. It's not. I always ask, and they never tell me. They're like, "I'll just put it over here. We'll give it to this person." I'm like, "Okay."
That's worthless.
Well, I mean, when I was excavating at Motza, we would find fossils because the ancient prehistoric people would find fossils and they would keep them, much like
Really?
people do today. Yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah. So they would just keep them and hang on to them or do something. We don't know what they did.
It's the prehistoric IAA.
Yeah.
Where-
But
so-
we would
so-
put it aside and.
So if I was digging in my garden in Tel Aviv and I found a coin, that's robbery if I keep it.
If you keep it, it's like it is robbery if you keep it. But no one would ever know it's a coin. Not that you should do that.
No, but
don't
if
do
I
that.
try and sell it, then
If you
someone
try and
will
sell
know.
it and someone catches you, it's a big deal. That's
Kinda-
actually
so
law.
that's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that the government of Israel owns. I mean, there's also
a
the issue
law.
that they own all.
Yeah,
the
there's a whole
land.
law.
But
About
yeah,
like historic
Yeah.
properties, or
So that's why there's actually antiquity dealers in Jerusalem because there was a whole law because when Israel became a country, the British mandate had allowed all these antique sellers, and so there was a law about they were grandfathered in, but now no one else can be an antique seller.
Yeah.
And in fact, all these antique sellers, their entire stock is managed by the IAA. And if one of those antique sellers wants to go out of business or wants to close up shop, he can only sell his stock to other antique sellers.
so it's kind of like not a monopoly, but the IAA is a monopoly. But
Yeah.
but
But it's
these antique
in,
sellers, yeah.
but it's all in an attempt to try to because
control the
because there were
antiquities.
robberies.
Well, and
Let
there's
me
st-
remind you
Oh,
about
yes.
Moshe Dayan,
Yeah.
who robbed. Do you know the stories?
That he would keep antiquities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he would dig in sites and just take it home.
Yeah, and it's still and we still have problems
but
with robberies.
He would dig using state resources. No, he wouldn't
I
take a
don't
shovel.
remember the whole
well,
story.
he would. Yeah, he was like in the IDF, so
Exactly.
he would probably take a bunch of
Bunch
soldiers.
of soldiers
Yeah.
and go digging. So that's
Yeah.
a problem for a different reason.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we still have robberies today, and it's a whole thing because it's.
Have you ever encountered a robbery?
No, and I don't particularly want to because I'm supposed to
Be
stop
the one
them
who's present-
and
Yeah.
stop them, and that's kind of
Any means necessary.
well, not necessarily any means necessary because it's obviously like stay
Do
safe.
you have a license to kill?
No, it's a very good thing too.
She has a flint axe.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, don't you dare. It's really great deterrent. But it's one of those things that always kind of like if I do see someone like even if I see someone with a metal detector, I have to stop them because that's also depending, they have to have licenses to do that.
Even on the beach?
Even on the beach.
Really?
Yeah,
You
depending.
need a license?
I think. I don't know. I know that if I see someone, I don't
That's
know the
how
rules.
the IAA funds itself. All the shekels they find
Yes,
on the
exactly.
beach, they're like,
Oh my
nope,
God.
nope. We have to date that, but it says 1996 on it.
Well, if it's a modern shekel, it's one of those things that's like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they find so much coins, I bet.
Oh yes, coins we find all over the place. It's just it also, again, we find coins all over the place of certain time periods. Like
Right.
we find
When
Roman
did
coins.
start?
Oh, good grief.
Like in prehistoric times, there were
Not
no.
in prehistoric, but like Roman, right around the Roman times,
I see.
Greek usually. But
So it's not a big find, but there were big finds in
there's
there.
with coins, it depends upon the type of coin. Much like there's these silver dimes in America. If you find a silver dime, because there was only like 500 of them minted, if you find an American silver dime from, I think it's like the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, I can't remember which one, it's worth a lot of money because there was only 500 minted. So it like I think it was Hezekiah. Was it Hezekiah? Yeah. Sorry, my husband's over here. He's helping me because he's also an archaeologist. There's a coin from Hezekiah's time period, but there's only like one or two found in the entire country. So if you find one of those, yeah, it's worth a lot of money. But if you find another coin from the Ottoman Empire,
Right. Another
not worth-
fat sultan coin.
if it's another thin leaf gold coin, it's like it's worth the amount the gold, like the weight in gold. It's not worth much because we've got so much.
But they did find like some crazy things throughout the years here in Israel. Like there was this cave with the most ancient something from what was it?
Oh gosh, I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
But it's like the most ancient like human of that time. I think
Yeah.
it's from in the cave. But yeah, there's
Like from a few 100,000 years
Yep.
ago.
and that
So
happens
they
quite a
find
bit.
that. And also my friend told me that there's this thing about that you can find in caves in Israel, because if there was a tsunami, then it would bring up to higher caves. Do you know this or no? Okay.
No, I don't
can't even
actually.
repeat it, but it's interesting. I'll check it and get back
All
to
you
you.
remembered was tsunami.
Yeah,
Tsunami and cave.
he would tell me that in the cave you can because there were tsunamis, so sometimes it would bring like, I don't know, like fossils or clams inside the cave, and then
the
you would
tsunami
know,
cave phenomenon.
and then you can date tsunamis
Yeah.
from ancient times by looking at higher caves but
Ah.
Oh, because it's the further, because archaeology you date from what you see on the ground is the latest, and then as you go down you go, yes, it's earlier. As you go down, it's earlier.
yeah.
So yeah, you could date it by doing carbon dating on the types of coral, or as the types of fossils, as the fossils
Right.
get washed up.
So why were you aching?
Because today I was in Ashkelon and I was moving marble, and marble is heavy, and
Like ancient marble or new marble?
well, there's no. Again, ancient, it's one of those words. As a prehistorian, for me, ancient, it's prehistory. But for other people, it's Roman and Greek and Byzantine and
When
Ottoman.
is this marble from?
I can't really say because it's an ongoing project.
Ah, okay.
But you
Can
were
we guess? Let's go. Guess. A billion years.
No, not even close.
no
Yeah,
marble. It should be a
1,000
few
years.
thousand years.
Yeah.
I mean, how old can marble be? Like
I don't know.
You
Somewhere
could- well,
between
the-
1,000
well,
and a billion.
Well, are you talking about the rock itself, or are you talking about the carving of marble? 'Cause
carving.
The carving, you know.
yeah, the
'cause-
carving didn't start
Of marble until, like-
yeah.
Was it carved marble?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
There's
There's
no.
another
I'm
clue.
not moving raw marble. I'm not moving just like random
Maybe-
bricks of
maybe-
You look
marble.
like a
Maybe you
strong
got a
girl.
side
but-
Well, thank you,
business.
but no, it's not. No, but I was moving marble, and so it was difficult, and so I had to help the person put it and move it. And
when
so
you
it's
lift
very-
it, you need to use your knees
yes,
instead of your back.
Yeah.
you
And
know,
so,
that's what
but
they
even
say,
the arms and
idea.
try to move it and finagle it.
So you were saying you do 4 different types. You do pikuach, supervision.
Pikuach, and then you'll do in Hebrew it's chadachei bedika. In English we call it test trenches or test cuts, which is I'll be sent to a field or a spot, and I work with a backhoe, and we do trenches. And so the trenches will be about 4 meters long, about as wide as his back scoop is, and then 2 to 3 meters deep. And we do a series of those 10 meters apart in all directions. So you do this grid of these different cuts. And so that's one way to test what might be in the field. And so if I find something, I have to go down into the cut and measure how deep it is, how long it is, how wide it is, what type of material, and then take pictures with a scale and a north arrow. And then when I write my report, I say, well, in this cut, I found this and this and that. And then
This is part of a research and salvage?
no, this is a step before that.
Okay.
So
just
what will
like
happen
surveying.
it's a type of survey, but we also do surveys, which are basically we just walk on the surface and we document using a GPS what we have found on the surface.
Okay. So that's a third type.
That's the third type, is the survey. And the fourth type is excavations. And all of these, instead of not a pikuach, but a test cuts and a survey could lead to an excavation. So what generally happens is that a contractor...
Well, pikuach could also, right?
It could also, not usually, but it could also. But what will often happen is that a contractor will get in contact with the IAA and will say, okay, I want to dig here. My manager, who is the archeolog Napa, I don't know how to translate Napa really well.
It's like a region.
Yeah, it's region,
Sub-region.
sub-district, something
Yeah.
like that. They will talk with him. They will have a meeting. They will discuss, what type of archaeology is there, depending upon the time period. Is it closer to the surface? Is it lower? And they will decide between them what type of testing will be done.
So let's say you dig in a site and you find a family from 20,000 years ago.
If I find bones, it's immediate, we stop.
But what then do you do?
So if I'm doing a test cut or if I'm doing an excavation.
Excavation.
So if I find bones, one of the first things that I do is also depending upon the time period is if it's like a prehistoric excavation, if I find bones, I usually immediately check for finds, see what's there. Obviously treat them with respect because they are still bones and they are still people. But if it's like a Roman time period, I'm doing it in Roman, the first thing I do is, at least for me, I haven't had this
Check
encounter.
for rings.
Well, no. Usually one of my first things that I would do, this has actually never happened to me because I haven't done really any Roman excavation, but what I would do would be the first thing to check if there's any burial goods. And if there's not, one of the things that I would first do would also call akakadisha, because we have an agreement that if it's buried a certain way and if it's a certain type and there's no finds, most likely it's Jewish. And so they come and they collect the individual and bring the individual to a safer place where they can have eternal rest.
Oh, really?
Yep. Wow. And often, and even other...
Jewish burial.
Yeah. And then even the bodies that we believe aren't Jewish, we still might do some testing, but then we usually turn them over. We almost pretty much, I think 100% of the time, turn them over to Akadisha after we have done some testing so that they can be buried, because according to...
Just to be safe.
Just to
Better
be safe.
safe than sorry.
Well, exactly, and
You
it's also...
when the day of judgment comes, you
Exactly.
don't want to mess
Exactly,
with
but every...
some angry...
Oh yes, but every single individual is treated with respect and care, and they're always turned over to...
But what
people.
if you find like something really, like an important finding of a body from
Again,
tens of thousands
of
ago?
years. Again, we excavate it very carefully, make sure to document everything, take pictures, take measurements, sometimes do 3D modeling, and then we will exhume the bones. Often this is also done by an anthropologist, not necessarily me. And they will do the testing that they think needs to be done. They'll examine the bones to determine age and sex and whatever else, and then...
But if it's an historic value, will it be like... I don't know. Could it end up in a museum or?
I mean, it could. Mm-hmm. Again, it would depend upon the agreement with Akakadisha, because they do have.
Sure. Yeah. But
Generally
speaking,
yes. Especially anywhere else in the world, they can end up in a museum. They could end up on display. They could end up in a lab. I mean, like Otzi, who is the Iceman, who was found in the Alps on the border between Switzerland and Italy, I think. And he was found with he was mummified, but it was actually really cold, so he still had skin on him. It's like we were able to see he had tattoos all over his body, so they were able to take some samples and test his tattoo and figure out what kind of ink he used, and they were able to do all kinds of tests. I think they're still doing tests on him.
That's thanks to global warming.
Yeah, actually, and
They
that's
never
actually,
talk about that.
Well, actually, a lot of archaeological things are coming out of the ice up north because of global warming,
Yeah.
because they were frozen for thousands of years for the last ice age, and so there's been a lot of finds coming out because everything is melting.
That's the good side of global warming. but so what would you consider your dream find in an excavation?
Oh, good lord. Damn.
A
Well,
family of 4.
Yeah.
no, actually, my dream find would be to find, well, it's never going to happen in this country, but I would love to find the,
The holy.
no. So, for example, during the Bronze Age, there was the time, so Egypt controlled this region during the Bronze Age. And in El Armana, which is a site in Egypt, it was one of the cities of Akhenaten. Akhenaten was the pharaoh that made everyone cancel all the Egyptian gods and only believed in Aten. And
It's one of the earliest references to Jerusalem, right? To the city of
Oh,
Jerusalem they used to curse cities, right, by breaking stuff.
oh gosh, I don't know. I'm not an Egyptologist. In Egyptology, anyway. But
Execration texts.
Yeah.
They would write the names and the places of their enemies, and then they would break it.
That does sound familiar, but again, I'm not an Egyptologist, so I don't know exactly. But in this site, they found a bunch of letters from the kings of different sites in Israel, in what is now modern day Israel, and what was called then Canaan. Excuse me. And they were writing letters of complaint to Akhenaten, being like, I've got these rebels who are bothering me. Can you come send troops? And I would love to find the library where they have all of his responses. That's what I would like to find. I would love to find a whole horde of texts, mostly ancient, like on clay tablets. That is what I would love to find. Or
And it would never happen here. You wouldn't.
I
Find...
don't know. It's because it's also in cuneiform, so I don't know if they kept it or not. But I would love to find some crazy cuneiform tablet library from like the Assyrian Empire or the Babylonian Empire or the Egyptian Empire.
Cool.
That would be.
We
that
know
would
how
be
to
cool.
read those languages.
Oh yes, yes. We've known for a while. We've known. It's always improving, but we've had the general grasp of Assyrian or cuneiform, to be more specific, since the 1800s. The late 1800s.
It would be cool if you found
That would be my dream, would be to find like a
Then you
library
could
of texts.
retire and
But he refused them help, right? So they probably...
Well, we don't know if he refused him help. We
know.
don't have his responses. That's what I want. Like, I would like to be able to find what he responded to. If he responded, or what he would say, or anything. That would be the part that I would love to see, because we don't know.
Do we know where about it could be?
If it existed, I don't know, because they weren't a coalition of kingdoms at that time. They were individual city-states. Because, for example, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah, they weren't just one city. Israel was Samaria and Tel Megiddo and other sites as well, and Judah was Tel Azekah and Jerusalem. And they were all together. But before that coalition of city-states that was ruled by one king from one city, each site had its own king, so to speak, leader, chief. Choose your word. And they each individually wrote a letter to Akhenaten to ask for help.
It's very cool. And follow-up question, like, what would be your dream location for an excavation on the globe? Like, if you...
Ooh. Oh. I love digging in Israel because we have a lot of stuff, but there's so many places. There's so many places that I would love to dig. I would know nothing about what I was digging because it's just so far beyond my time experience. But I would love to dig in, Iraq, Iran, and dig in ancient Mesopotamia. That's not going to happen. I would also
Who knows?
I would also love to dig in Egypt because Egyptians, there's they're finding everything. There was actually a Netflix special about it's Saqqara. So they did this like kind of documentary digging at Saqqara, which is there's several different types. There's Giza, the pyramids at Giza, and then at Saqqara is the stepped pyramid. And so they were digging at Saqqara, and it was just so funny to watch this documentary, and they were like digging. Oh, it's another wooden sarcophagus. Oh, look, it's another wooden sarcophagus. And for me, I'm like, what? Just, oh, it's another one. Oh, look, it's another one. And
It's like you look at Roman or
Yes.
Ottoman coins.
exactly. And so it's just one of those things where I'm like, it's the same kind of attitude, but I'm like, I look at coins and you're looking at
One
frickin'
archaeologist's junk is another's
exactly,
treasure.
exactly.
Yeah. Was there a place on Earth that no archaeologist wants to go to? Like, I don't know, like Florida or something?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
nothing
Unless you
interesting
retire, you
there.
can go to Florida.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's for me the reason why I came here is because the archaeology in the States, in the United States, there is archaeology there, but it's very different from here. You're digging for different colored patches of dirt because most of the time they built out of wood in the United States because that's what they had a lot of. And so you're digging for different patches of dirt. It's still there and you can still find it, but it's one of those things where you have to have the patience of a saint, and I do not have that.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So wait, now that we mentioned the States, humans originated from Africa, and then did they then have to travel the Atlantic Ocean, I guess?
No. So what they did was that they came out of Africa. They walked up what is called the Via Maris, which is this road coming through what modern day Israel, like leads into Europe and into Asia. And what they did is they walked
Crossed
up.
from Alaska?
Yeah, they crossed from Russia into Alaska. Alaska.
Because it was iced over?
Yep.
Between Alaska and Russia.
It's a land bridge.
And how long ago was that?
Oh gosh.
More or less.
It's
100,000 years here, there.
No,
To the 10.
it's like I want to say it's like, oh, gosh, I could be way off, but I want to say between 45 to 35,000 years, but that also could be way off.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
So there are remains in the Americas that go back tens of thousands of
Yes.
years. Okay.
Yes, and
So
it's-
Columbus did not discover.
No, and in fact, I was just reading an article about how there's evidence that Vikings found it even before him. Got there afterwards, even before him, by crossing the Atlantic. So,
Right.
But they didn't cross directly across the Atlantic. They coast hopped along Iceland and Greenland and got
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, but they got there and they were like, let's go home.
Well, they probably met the locals and were like, "Oh, you're different. Never mind," and went home. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but that's and that's also how people got to modern day the British Isles, because there was a land bridge between the Netherlands and the island of Britain, and so they just crossed that. There's
Because
actually
the sea was lower?
the sea was lower and it was frozen over and all of that, and so you could just walk across, and so you
Wow.
did. There's actually
fascinating.
there's actually a major prehistoric village at the bottom of the North Sea.
Really?
Yeah.
What? Mm-hmm. How deep is that?
I don't know. It's I don't know the depth, but it's that area that's like the shortest range between Britain and the Netherlands. It's around about there, I think.
And so I mean, it's probably at least like couple dozen meters down, and it's a village from how long ago? Do we know?
Again, it's about the same time as
Oh wow,
it could be 50,000, could be 60,000.
that's amazing.
Why aren't we archaeologists,
I
man?
don't know, man.
Because
Because it requires work.
Yeah, I was like,
You
it's a
gotta
lot
get
of
up at 4:30.
Yeah, it's hard labor, man. It's not, you're outside all day, every day, and you got to deal with the locals constantly questioning you. What are you doing here?
No,
I'm
they're
excavating.
gonna in 40,000 years they'll dig me up like this
Yeah.
right in front of
Just
a computer.
imagine, it's so funny. Just imagine Emily, right? And because an Israeli construction site, guys, it's like, it's this chaotic site of
Oh, yeah.
Arab builders and like redneck Israeli money mongering, and they're like
Contractors.
contractors and like thick-necked operators, and there you have Emily strolling.
Oh yes, you have me, who's very clearly the blonde, light-colored eye.
American. What are you even? They're
No, because they also all assume that I'm Russian, so they think that I'm just this Russian woman. So they're like, "What are you doing?"
Are you lost?
Yeah, they're like, "What?" So like, there's like, because you can obviously
ask them weird questions like, "Have you found any ancient coins?"
Well, no, I don't even ask them.
Who is this?
I don't even ask them. I just kind of show up and be like, "You see that? That's a wall. Stop." Oh, but no, it's nothing. It's nothing. No,
it's something.
It's something. You stop.
So
but what happens in this and this is because they try to bargain with me not all the time, but there's definitely people. There's contractors who've worked with the IAA for years who know that who know us, who know why we're there, who know that I am not there to sit on their head and direct their work, because that's not my job. My job is literally to make sure they don't find anything. Mm-hmm. If they find a modern day water pipe, that's not my problem because it's not archaeology. So, if I find a water pipe doing my test cuts, then it's my problem. But if it's a construction site and this backhoe or excavator,
you needed to become more Israeli than an Israeli to handle yourself.
Oh yes. Oh, yeah. But it's even funny because, again, I come from Minnesota and I was raised by my Italian mother's side of the family. So in Minnesota, I was considered incredibly assertive and bossy and loud and opinionated and impatient in Minnesota. I come here and people call me, "You're just so patient.
Geek.
You're so polite.
You're so polite. You're just..." And I had an Israeli one of my bosses, he turned and was like, "Emily, you need to be more assertive." And I called my mom. I was like, "Mom, I was told to be more assertive." And my mom was like, "Where the frick do you live?"
Wow.
So
wow. I like it's a struggle every day here, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's an adventure every day.
You're far away from Minnesota.
Oh yeah. And it's so hot. It's so warm.
Do you miss home? Do you miss Minnesota?
There's parts that I miss and there's parts that I don't miss. I don't miss being, because I also didn't just I didn't grow up in the big city. I grew up, also Minnesota, big city. Yeah. I grew up in Minneapolis until I was 12, and then I was moved to a smaller town, Buffalo, Minnesota. And I was incredibly loud for them. I was incredibly opinionated. I was so bossy and so assertive that I had a hard time being accepted and understood and welcome. But I come here and I just blend in, because if I got excited, I would start talking really loud and everyone just immediately thought I was angry. And here I start talking really loud and getting excited. No one bats an eye. No one freaks out. This is totally normal behavior.
Yeah.
And I move on with my day. And so
it's kind of like you found yourself.
Yeah. It's like I feel more like I can be myself here and no one gives a damn.
Yeah.
But I do miss Minnesota bureaucracy. I do miss that I go to the office and the person just turns around, "This is the form," and that's all I got to do. That's the part that I miss.
Yeah.
I have gotten adjusted to the Israeli customer service, but I also do miss Minnesota customer service every once in a while, where I can just tell someone "Help me," and they go, "Oh yes, of course, here you go," and they fall over themselves. But it's also one of those moments that I've gotten so used to Israeli that I'm also like, "You don't need to fall over yourself. Calm down. Just point me in the direction. I'll be okay."
Yeah.
And so it's just like this weird thing of.
But you've been here for 7 years now, right?
Yes.
So it's been a while.
Yes, but it's also, I haven't been home for 2.5 years now because of the whole Corona thing.
Wow.
So.
And before, does your family visit? Did they visit?
No, because my family's financial situation up until recently has not been very good. So they didn't have the finances to come and see me.
So you would visit, you
Yes.
would go back home.
Yep. I would go back home once oh, sorry, my phone might be going off in the background. But mostly my family.
And the plan is to stay here?
Yep, we are staying here.
Wow.
This is where we're living. We tried,
Till you find those Akhenaten.
Yes, of course, and then I'm gone.
Then you're taking them with you.
Yep. Sell them at $1 million a pop. Yep, that's what I want to do. But
that's pretty cheap, actually. Probably,
yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Yeah, it's actually, they're probably priceless, but whatever. We actually did just we had a European adventure. We tried to move to Europe, actually, to the Netherlands, and it ended in pretty much catastrophe. We moved there to be with my husband's father's side of the family and realized that the majority of that family over there was not actually as close or as good as a family as we thought. There are definitely members of the family over there that we are keeping in contact with that we like, but they're like the only ones. And we realized once we were there that the reasons why we had left Israel just didn't matter anymore, and that in fact because we're both me and my husband, my Israeli husband, are both very family oriented, that we were just, this is not what we moved here for. We're going back to Israel. So we lived in the Netherlands for all of 2 months and then came right back.
This time to stay.
Yes, exactly. And also it was kind of funny that I would have these, every other day I was like crying and having bouts of homesickness, and I was sitting there like, I miss home and home is Israel. And it was just like, dang it grew on me.
What is the line? Sometimes you gotta lose what you got to appreciate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those moments where it's like, you know what? Home is Israel, so that's where we're gonna go. So we came back, and so we're here to stay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I went right back to my job at the IAA. They were like, oh, you're back, good, we need people. It's like, okay.
There's not a plethora of archaeologists, just
No.
lined at the door.
No, well, I mean, there's a lot of people study archaeology, but it is, I think also mainly what a problem is worldwide is no one knows how to make a job of it.
Mm-hmm.
As what do you do? How do you do it? Because oftentimes in university, the only job really presented to you is that of the academic and being a professor.
Mm-hmm.
And also throughout the world, because throughout the world, there are organizations, even in the United States and Canada and Mexico, all over the world, Europe, much like the IAA.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes it's very difficult to know that exists because it's not as talked about.
No PR, no.
Exactly.
You need to willingly go to the website, to the job section.
And so the IAA has been doing a much better job of that recently, because we do a lot of work with school groups and family groups and things, and get people interested and involved in archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
also a very man-oriented profession, no? Archaeology.
Like male-dominated.
Like being a girl,
It's
a little girl who says to her parents, I want to become an archaeologist, might get deterred.
I mean, back in the day, a lot of my managers are male, but it's most of my colleagues are girls.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Our
really?
generation it's women. So there's a lot more women going into archaeology. But yes, older generations were mostly male, as you can
Times are changing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, times are changing, and there were women back then as well. It's just, it's really hard to say. Archaeology is mainly a male-oriented, dominated field. A lot of fields are mostly male-oriented and dominated. Let's be
that's
honest.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
But no, most of my colleagues are female. We're pretty much, we're pretty much half and half, at least in my
Very cool.
district. Yeah.
Do you have an Instagram or something like that where you can people?
I do. I don't really post I don't post a lot to it in general. Not just
Okay.
archaeology. I would say, otherwise I would say, yeah, follow me, but I don't really post to it.
Are there any like archaeology blogs that you follow that you think
Or YouTube
that you
channel.
would recommend?
Oh, there's so many. You can YouTube so much. My favorite history thing is the British Museum does a whole series with their different curators and collections managers, where it's called a curator's corner, and they'll talk about a certain object that they have. I think that's a great entryway, so you can see a person who knows this object and talks about it, and is also very excited because they're told to pick an object that they love, and so and they've got curators from all over, from prehistory to Japanese art to Anglo-Saxon burials, and it's just all kinds of varieties. But you can pretty much Google any university and there'll be a lot of videos and YouTubes and stuff. It's out there. It's just not very popular, which is unfortunate. But there's so many. There's all kinds of Instagram pages that also you can follow. There's even like TAU has an archaeology page that you can follow.
Tel Aviv University.
Tel Aviv University that has an Instagram page that you could follow, and they'll talk about their excavations and things that they had found in their past excavations as well. I think even each excavation, Tel Azaka has its own Instagram page, and so does Tel Megiddo. And so you can follow them and see what they're doing and what they're up to.
Awesome.
Very cool. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was fascinating.
Emily.
Before we go,
Yes.
we are sponsored by Arutz Sheva.
Yes. IsraelNationalNews.com. Check them out, guys. It's a great source for opinion pieces for news. We're also up on the website, IsraelNationalNews.com, Arutz Sheva, and
Israel National and the Australian Jewish News, sorry.
Yeah.
AJN.timesofisrael.com. Check them out for the Australian angle for Jewish news.
yes. And, of course, we do this on our free time, so if you want to help us out, go to 2njb.com/donate. And we don't have them here up on the
I forgot
table.
to put them on the table.
But we have some cool new merchandise. So check out 2njb.com/merch to get your own Two Nice Jewish Boys mug or BDS Tears mug. Yeah, that's one of them. And enough about, we're going to make a nice Jewish girl mug too.
Yeah.
So go to 2njb.com/merch. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Emily.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.